God can blow your mind. You see, we're going to talk about this today. And you got to understand that in life, you might ask God for a blessing, right? You might ask God to give you something. You might make your request known unto God, like the Bible says. And guess what? God can give you more than what you requested. A lot of times people, they like to limit God. They like to limit God to what they believe that He's going to do. Some people, they just believe that God's just going to do this small thing for them, right? Some people believe that God's going to do something small for them, and if they ask God for just a simple favor, that's just going to be it. Let me tell you something. When you're a person who's truly serving God, and you're really doing the will of the Father, and you're really putting in work for His kingdom, you fasting, you praying, you winning souls for God, you living a holy and righteous lifestyle in front of God, right? God can blow your mind with blessings, right? God can give you more than what you expected. There was many of you guys, King Solomon in the Bible. King Solomon, he asked God for wisdom, right? But not only did God give King Solomon wisdom, but He made him the richest man to walk the planet. And King Solomon was a man who, even though he fell later on in life, but he started off good in God. His father David was a man after God's own heart. So never underestimate what God can do with you. People can say whatever they want about you. Because nowadays people have to determine who's blessed and who's not. People have to say, oh, this person don't deserve this blessing. Oh, they're not fit for this. I've heard people, when I was coming up, I heard people say stuff like, oh, that woman, she too good for you. Or a woman, or somebody would tell a woman, right? Oh, that man, he too good for you. They're out of your league. They're not in your league. Stay in your league. Let me tell you something. In God's kingdom, ain't no such thing as leagues. Ain't no such thing as leagues, right? In God's kingdom, God can give you more than what you expected. You might be a person, right, to where you might have asked God for a simple blessing, right? You might have asked God, God, would you be able to please give me, a nice, beautiful wife, a virtuous Proverbs 31 woman, and that's all I'm going to ask you for. Guess what? God give you a wife to where she was, let's say you like women who are just basically natural and you don't really care about makeup and all that, right? God can give you something that surpasses all of that because He's God. He's the one who gives blessings and He's the one who takes blessings. Just like the Bible says, God gives and He takes. So do not let nobody put you in a category because God can give you far more than what you expected. God can give you far more than what you even dreamed of. You're a man, you probably just thought that God would just give you an average woman, she's average looking, she's just a regular type woman, right? And God can give you a woman who's prettier than any model you've seen, prettier than any celebrity you've seen. And guess what? Everything that you found attractive, any features you like in a woman, God give you those same exact features plus more. He could give you a woman with the best personality that not too many people have ever seen. Same thing if you're a woman, right? You might have asked God for a husband. You might have asked God, God just want me a God-fearing man. And you might just be thinking in your mind, right, that God is going to give you an average man. He's just going to be average looking. He's going to be average Joe. But guess what? God can give you a man to where he is way more than what you expected. He's probably much better looking than you picture him to be in your mind. He's probably has a better personality than you thought. He's more loving than you thought. He's more of a provider than you thought. He loves you like more, even some of your own family members love you. He loves you so much you never thought you'd ever experience the type of love in your life. You never thought you'd experience the type of love. You thought this stuff was only in the movies. But never underestimate what God can do with you. And that's just a relationship. We talk about anything. You might ask God for a house, right? You might just be asking God to give you a nice 2 or 3 bedroom house, right? And God can end up giving you a nice 5-bedroom house with everything. A pool, big living room, a big backyard, right? Because God can just, let me tell you something, guys, we just, I'm lost for words because we just serve a almighty God. We serve a God who can just do all things. Through Christ, all things are possible. And, God can give you far more than what you expected. You see, when you're a person who's truly after God's own heart, you're not using God. Because a lot of people nowadays like to use God. They just want God to give them a blessing, right? But they don't want to put in no work for it. They don't want to seek God. They don't want to fast and pray. They don't want to seek ye first after camp heaven. They don't want to read their Bible. They don't want to give up certain things for God that's no longer serving them any good purpose. They don't want to cut off that ex-boyfriend, the ex-girlfriend who's off the world, who don't care about God. They don't want to give up their past life. They don't want to give up the smoking, the drinking. They don't want to give up the gambling. They don't want to give up the partying. So for people who don't want to give that stuff up, you can't just be asking and expecting God to give you the best blessings of his kingdom. You can't be expecting God to give you the best spouse, the best friendship, when you can't even give God your all. If you want God to if you want God to give his all to you, then you gotta give him your all in return. It's a deal for a deal. You can't just be asking God for all these things while you go out and live life your way, but you're not doing nothing for God's kingdom. You're not putting in no work. You're not seeking after the Most High's will. You don't want to follow after God's plan for your life. You want to do what you want to do. You want to go out, date who you want, marry who you want, be friends with whoever you want, live wherever you want, and yet you expect God to bless you. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. It's a deal for a deal. You gotta seek God. You gotta go through your trials and tribulation, go through your tests. Then when God sees that you really love him, then that you pass all your tests, that you really about his kingdom, you've not given up on him even in the good times and in the hard times, that's when you can expect God's blessings. That's when God can make a way for you. Because God knows who truly loves him. Because many people, they just talk that talk. Oh, I love God. Oh, the God's my father. I love him. Oh, I trust in God. Yeah, you trust in God, but does God trust in you? That's what you gotta understand. So, this is a message only for people, really, to be honest. I'm just going to keep it real with you. This message is only for people who are really seeking God, who are really real followers of God, to where they've given up everything for God. They kill their flesh. They crucify themselves. It's no longer their life, but their life belongs to God. They're not seeking after their own will. They're not seeking after their own desires, but they seek after the Most High's desires. This is this video for those types of people. This video is not for people who just want to live life wherever they want, do whatever they want, expect God to bless them in return. No. This video is only for people who are really after God's heart. This video is really for people who are seeking the Most High. This is who the video is for. Nobody else. And the sad thing is, so many people nowadays, I saw a picture on Facebook. I've seen this picture actually throughout the social media platforms a lot lately. It has a picture. One side is people who believe in God, right? And you got a whole crowd of people walking down, right? But then you got the other part that says people who obey God. And you only got 5 or 6 people in the picture. Even in the kingdom of heaven, you got a lot of Christians to where they talk about they love God. You could put 1,000 Christians in one room, right? And out those 1,000 Christians, you'll be blessed if you even get 30 who obey God. That's how sad it is nowadays. Because people that, a lot of these prosperity preachers, they put this false image in people's mind that they could just do whatever they want, chase after their own dreams, live life however you want, and God will bless you. God got you. You want to chase after your dreams, but what about God's dreams? What about God's plans for your life? What about God's vision? What about that? You want to fulfill your dreams, but what about God's dreams? Your dreams might be to move to LA and buy a $10 million mansion, but what if God don't want you in LA? What if he wants you to live in Atlanta? What if he wants you to live in Houston? What if he wants you to live in New York, Boston, Philadelphia? What if he just wants you to have just a $500,000 house, not no big 20-bedroom house that's only going to be for you. You even got no family. Half the people are not even married, but yet you want a 20-bedroom house? And yet there's homeless people on the street who need some of those rooms? This is why it's very important to be in the spirit. Because when you're in the spirit, a lot of the stuff that people do in the world just don't really make sense to you. Of course, ain't nothing wrong because it's your money. You're not robbing nobody. But still, though, when God comes to your life, he just changes you. And when God changes you, you don't even care about certain stuff no more. And that's why when God starts changing you, you stay loyal to his kingdom. You stay loyal to God, just like how Job was. He was loyal to God, even in the good times and the hard times. God can bless you with blessings way more than what you expected. You might be just going out, you might be asking God to bless you, just with a regular old car, right? You don't even care if it's used or whatever the case is. And God could bless you with a brand new car. You know why? Because you are obeying God. You are obeying God. You're seeking after his kingdom. And God loves you like you're one of his own children. And since due to that, you deserve your blessings. You deserve God's best. You deserve that. You deserve for God to give you his best blessing. You deserve for God to give you his all. God's real people, the ones who real obey God, we deserve God's blessings. We don't deserve no secondhand blessing. We don't deserve to sell ourselves short. That's why I'll tell you guys in numerous videos, do not sell yourself short. Because when you sell yourself short, you're just basically giving up on God. You're giving up on the plan and the blessings he has in store for you. Well, if you were a man, you choose to marry that woman, right? And that woman, God said not to marry her. But you're desperate because you're lonely. You end up marrying that woman, you end up going through a lot of chaos in your life because not only do you disobey God, but you selling yourself short. And people who sell themselves short in life, people who can't wait on God and can't go after God's best blessings, people who don't receive God's best blessings, they are always in a miserable. That's why you got people who are millionaires and they still unhappy. They hop from relationship to relationship, and yet they still have no peace. That's what I've told you guys before. I'm going to tell you again. Do not settle for less. Go after God's blessing. You deserve God's best blessings. But in order to get God's best blessings, you got to seek after Him and really be down for His kingdom. Not just loving God when life is going your way and, you got the 6-figure job, 7-figure job, you got your business, you bought yourself a brand new car, but as soon as you lose that stuff, you cussing God out saying, God, why would you allow this to happen to me? Why would you do this and do that? Not even knowing that God was testing you right there. But you got to be loyal to God in the good times and the bad times. But for God's real loyal followers, man, do not underestimate what God can do for you. God can open up doors that you never thought. God can open doors that no man can shut. God can open doors that you never dreamed of. Because God's favor is better than anything. Because it's one thing to have like good credit, to have a 700, 800, 850 credit score, right? But God's favor can surpass the credit score. Because guess what? You could have a credit score that's a 400. But due to you following God, you obeying God, God can still allow you to get that brand new car at a small interest rate. And we're a low amount of down payments per month. You know why? Because that's God's favor. God's favor is better than anything. Better than good credit. Better than anything. Better than a 6- and 7-figure job. Anything. But nevertheless, guys, never underestimate. Do not let nobody down you. Because do not let nobody think that you got to be in a certain league to have a certain type of person, to have a certain type of friendship. Oh, you don't deserve no woman who's a 9 or a so-called 10. Oh, you are a man who's a 6. You don't deserve them. Who are you? Stay in your league. Oh, you're a woman. Oh, who are you doing going after that guy? That guy, he a model. He a 9 and he a 10. Okay, you a 5. Who are you to be going after him? Don't let nobody underestimate what God can do for you. Because God can give you blessings that far surpass your expectation. Don't let nobody down you. Because when you want God's people, God give you blessings that you never expected. And you'll be so grateful and happy in the end. But nevertheless, guys, let this message be a great blessing unto you. And there will nobody down you. Because people of the world, their mindset is different. They think you gotta look a certain way, dress a certain way in order to score somebody who's like a so-called 9 or a 10. In order to have a good friendship, in order to have a good marriage. No. When you have God in the center of everything, it will prosper. When God's in the center of everything, it will align in His will. It will always prosper and work out in the end. That's why a lot of world people don't understand that. That's why a lot of world people, they will see a so-called Christian couple, right? And, I mean, not so-called, but they will see a Christian couple, right? And they will say, how come that woman's with that man and she looks much better than him? How come that man's with that woman, he looks much better than her? You know why? Because God put them together. God's mindset is much bigger than your mindset. That's why God says His thoughts are above your thoughts, His ways are above your ways. Because God was looking at the heart of those people. And God saw that they had a beautiful heart. And guess what? God aligned them together. And they deserve God's blessings. And guess what? You might think that the other person doesn't fit the other person based on looks, but the other person might look at that person as the best looking person on the planet. So you need to change your mindset. Because in God's eyes, He could put anything together. Because He's God. And for God's people, God will always bless them with the best blessings and make sure that His children are taken care of. But nevertheless, guys, let this message be a great blessing unto you. Have a blessed day. Take care.